Well, Floyd's Mayhem Garage here. I present to you heavy metal. I've been busy, and this is the result. I had a ridiculous idea. Got inspired by mostly Roadkill and their Nascar. I thought that was just one of the coolest, neatest builds. Absolutely pointless, but completely fun. And so I've had that idea for a long time, and I finally made it happen. So what you're looking at is a 1968 Charger body sitting on a late 90s, early 2000s Port City race cars chassis. And it was a Southwest Tour Nascar pavement perimeter car. So the chassis was pretty cool. I bought it complete, minus motor and transmission. And with my plan here, it worked out quite nicely with no motor transmission. Allowed me to put a mopar in it, so it's got a 1970 383 HP motor in it, backed up by a 727 transmission. With putting the Charger body on there, Roadkill cut their Monte Carlo body all apart to match the wheelbase of the race car. I didn't want to do that because to me the 68 Charger has some of the most beautiful body lines of any car. So I wanted to keep those proportional, so I actually stretched this frame 12 inches. And being that I am a little bit of a hefty guy, I ended up stretching it all down the middle, so I actually lengthened the cabin area of this by 12 inches, which gave me room for both myself and more room for a passenger. So it does have a passenger seat, so I can scare my friends. And yeah, what else is there to talk about? It's ridiculous. It's about as low to the ground as you can make it. I think it's 3 inches off the ground, and I think actually part of the rusty body hangs lower than that. Yeah, 383 motor, 727 transmission. It's a Winters quick change rear end. So it's got the gears on the back, so it's got a pinion shaft that comes through, runs to the gears, and the pinion gear itself comes in from the back side and runs the pinion, so you can change those gears around. Pretty wicked setup. 3 linked in the rear, coilovers on all 4 corners. It's a legit race car that's now street legal with a body. And of course, as any good project car, this is not done yet, it's still a work in progress, but we can get you some of the details of this thing. So, metal hood, seen much better days. Cut out around the engine. I ended up cutting out the louvers of the cowl, which is why I ended up with a big square hole. And my thought process at this point is I can fill it back in with like aluminum, riveted in place if I want, leave it square. It is kind of cool seeing the kind of open engine, but gotta play with that, figure that out still. No hood hinges, we're just sitting here. But this gives you a good look at the framework of the car. It gives you a good look at the suspension, the Wilwood disc brakes. It's amazing to me how once these cars are kind of old and outdated, they become almost worthless. You can pick these race cars up for, a couple $1,000s, and you can buy a really, really nice one. Sometimes with motor and transmissions under 10 grand. It's like once they're kind of outdated or kind of old, they just almost get thrown away. So I ended up, got this one without motor and transmission, but even that's the only thing that was missing. Everything else was still there. I don't know really much about it. I'm crash course in learning about these race car parts. Like I said, Wilwood disc brakes, the rotors bolt onto the hubs. Really expensive stuff, cool, really don't know a whole lot about it. But then being part of the race car as well, the motor is set back super far. And one of the reasons I ended up doing that was for weight transfer. And this thing, as it sits, suspension, I need to buy some springs and shocks and even this thing out. It's still suspension-wise set up for going left. I've straightened out the front end so that at least the wheels are somewhat straight, but still got to work on that. And fun enough, cutting this body out, this was a super rusty 68 Charger I started with. Almost everything I cut out was rusty and needed replaced anyways, and there was a couple things I didn't want to cut out that I still had to cut out to make this fit anyways. But I had to cut out more out of the rear wheel wells than I wanted to. I actually got into the roof structure on the interior, which I was hoping to keep intact. But even once I cut through that, it cut through it like butter because it was rusty on the inside. Both sides had rat nests inside, and they had rusted out from the inside. So even if I went to restore this, I would have had to have built those anyways. I've had a lot of fun, I guess, building the doors. They were neat. To get around the cage, I wanted to leave enough structure on this. So this still has the door bars in it, which meant I had to cut out the inner structure of the door. And to clear those door bars, I had to get rid of the original latches. So those didn't clear. So I had to build my own latches for this. So I ended up buying some low-profile latches from Speedway Motors. And you can see how much of the inside I had to cut out, but I did that so that it clears the door bars. So one of the neat little race car things of this again is this little spinny knob. This turns a bolt down there, I guess you would call it, because this has two master cylinders. One controls the front brakes, one controls the rear brakes. The brake pedal itself is sleeved. Inside that sleeve is a nylon ball. This pushes the nylon ball back and forth between that tube, so you have adjustable brakes front to rear on the fly, which is completely pointless on a street car, but it's really cool that you can do that, and again, that it's part of the old street car, or the race car still. And of course it's functional, which you can crank them all the way to where you got front brakes, and you can do real easy burnouts. Like this thing needs help doing burnouts anyways. So one of the nightmare things I ran into on this was the exhaust. With the driver box on this side, actually let me back up. The car originally had a small block Chevy in it, and it had crossover headers. So they came up the back side of the motor, the driver's side crossed over the back side of the transmission over to the passenger side, and where the passenger seat is where the exhaust ran through and out. Well, me wanting to put a passenger seat in this, I had to get really creative with exhaust. My footwell area on this side, and shifter linkage, and power steering lines, and starter and everything on this side, I had almost zero room to run exhaust. So the driver's side, I ended up running shorty headers, ran it over to the passenger side. Passenger side one I had to loop around to bring it up on top, and so now they're both on the passenger side. And I ran those down by the transmission. One went underneath the transmission, one stayed on the passenger side, so they both sort of follow the drive shaft on the way back, and then they split, going left and right side out through the quarter panels. And I had mentioned the power steering lines. I don't know if you can take a peek down in here. Ran off of the pinion of the rear end is actually the power steering pump on this. One of the race car things that they did, it takes the parasitic draw off the engine and puts it into the driveline. So it's kind of interesting, you only have power steering when you're moving. And not going in reverse. So, and probably the most important thing about this whole build is functional. So this actually runs through the fuel cell. Had to get creative there. I'm probably going to have to change it up a little bit because it's a little kinked, but it does work. I currently have no trunk floor, but it does go into the fuel cell. Fuel cell, we were at the gas station and we put almost 20 gallons in it, and it still wasn't full. So I had, I'm guessing 4 gallons in there before we filled up, I think. So it's a pretty big fuel cell in the back of this thing. But eventually I would like to fill this in some sort as well. But this car, as mentioned how rusty it was, I had previously cut all this out for rust repair anyways. And if you look at the quarter panels, they're cut up kind of funny. This one's actually cut lower than this side. This side's cut higher. And that's just how high the rust extended. And so I was originally going to restore this car, and the further I dug into it and the further I kept cutting, the rust just never stopped. And I eventually ended up finding a better body and built that one, and this one was just sort of sitting until its moment to shine like this. Well, I'm sure I'm missing some about this car. There's a lot of details. I've done so much work to this, but this isn't the last time you're going to see it. I do have lots of plans for this. It'll be in plenty more videos. I also have plans of having lots of fun with this thing. I want to take it to racetracks, different racetracks, you know. I'd like to make it to an oval, drag strip, road course, stuff like that. And I also just want to take it places. I want to go to car shows. I want to go to, you know, just other events, see what people's reactions are. And of course, I want to keep building it because it's far from done. I'm going to go for the kind of NASCAR vibe, so it's going to have big numbers on the side, big numbers on the roof, stickered up, get that kind of vintage NASCAR look. I got to build bumper brackets for it, so I can get bumpers on it, front and rear. I got to finish out the quarter panels. A lot of stuff to do still, but it runs and drives. This is one of the greatest parts about these. So we'll keep working on it, and we'll see you in the next one.